It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Mr. Kevin Baxter from the LA Times and myself, Josh Guesman, are joining you once again after an LA Galaxy absolute dismal loss to the Seattle Sounders on Sunday on national television in front of lots of people who are watching and waiting to see what the LA Galaxy could do against a team that was probably better than them, but certainly not the performance that I think anybody expected from the LA Galaxy in this. And we're going to, of course, talk about that and all of the issues that have sort of risen up from that. And to help me do that, of course, is my good friend in the press box and the guy who spends countless hours now doing this podcast alongside with me, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kevin, how's it going, buddy? Hanging in there?
I'm trying to. How about you?
I am surviving. It's busy on Twitter. It's busy on social media. The websites are getting the clicks. People seem to be a little fired up about this loss. Brief thoughts on the game as I pretend like we're not going to talk about this game the entire show, but go ahead.
Well, I thought it was a dismal effort, and I thought the Galaxy lost in every way possible. They were out-coached, they were out-thought, they were out-hustled, they were outplayed. It's hard to see a way forward if they're going to keep playing like that. Clearly Seattle was a better team, but things like the way Seattle kept attacking up the left-hand side and bunching attackers on the left-hand side, Curt Onalfo had absolutely no answer for that. He looked like he had, it's kind of a deer in the headlights look. And that was what you had written before the game. You predicted that was exactly what they were going to do. The decision to bring Boateng off in the 37th minute. I'm not sure where that came from, but when Emo walked past Curt, he didn't even bother to acknowledge his outstretched hand. When Ashley Cole came off the field, he avoided the coach too. I mean, it looks like Onalfo's lost the team as much as he's losing games, and the way the losses are coming, they're coming at record frequency now. When you look at the Galaxy have not lost 5 of their first 7 games since 1997. The 3 losses at home, that equals their total from the last 2 years. It's hard to see what they have to build on right now.
Yeah, the LA Galaxy have won 2 games in 2017. Both of those games they won came against a reduced 10-man team on the other side. So they beat RSL, 10-man RSL. They beat a 10-man Montreal game. I think, Kevin, we were trying to say that those were 2 different games, and that the Montreal game felt like a game that the Galaxy should have won regardless if there was a 10-man. But until they win a game against an 11-man team, you can't really throw that stat into the wastebasket yet, and they haven't. Here's the difference between any of the other losses the Galaxy have had and what happened in Seattle, at least for me. You look at Dallas and Portland and even the game in Vancouver. The LA Galaxy were competitive in those games. They were able to, be dangerous, even reduced to 10 men themselves. They were able to be dangerous against Portland. So you look at all these things and you say that the Galaxy should have been competitive against Seattle, and they should have been up for that game too, Kevin. It's frustrating. They lose on the road to Orlando in a game they probably should have got a point out of, although you could also make the argument Orlando could have blown them out of the water. That's fine. Either way, I'm okay with. But there was frustration building with the team. You wanted to see a response, and you got jack crap for a response. And not only did you get that, a flat response from the team, but they looked like they were a chicken with their head cut off. It looked like they were completely and totally unprepared for Seattle, and understanding that Seattle had, dangerous players. Like, it was a surprise that Jordan Morris, Nicholas Ladero, Clint Dempsey, it was a surprise that even Jones, their left back, was attacking the right side of the LA Galaxy that has Nathan Smith and Daniel Sturridge. Like, that was a surprise. If I can figure it out, Kevin, there's no way that a coaching staff like Curt Onalfo and him should not have been able to figure that out. And that's surprising to me.
Well, here's a couple things. And when you look at that performance and you look at the season, again yesterday for the 4th or 5th time after a loss, we heard players saying, we need to sit down. We need to talk about Alessandrini said it for the first time yesterday. He said, I can't explain this, but I need to sit down with my coaches and I need to sit down with my teammates, and we need to talk about this and try to find a solution. Jelle Van Dam said it for the third time, and he's the captain. He said, I think everyone is disappointed. I think we let ourselves down. I don't know how to explain this. The captain said, I don't know how to explain this. But again, they talked about, we're going to sit down and talk through this. Players, again, used Onalfo's old phrase, we're going to learn from this. I don't know what they're learning. Obviously, they're not applying those lessons because they continue to lose. So the fact that for the fifth time, we hear people saying we need to sit down and talk about this. Brian Rowe said we're not on the same page.
Right.
It looks like a team in disarray. You had Jermaine Jones and other players yelling at each other on the field. That shows me that they're a little bit out of control, that no one is really quite clear about what it is they're supposed to be doing. And I think that leads to the frustration, and that leads to the yelling. You know, Jermaine thinking that maybe João Pedro is supposed to be going left and he goes to the right because they're, again, as Brian Rose said, they're not on the same page. That's troubling because it continues to happen. And then on top of that, the players disrespecting the coach when they came off the field. I mean, that's a public embarrassment to do that, in front of the crowd. The home fans booed the players off the field at halftime. Again, there's just not a lot of positive. And what really worries me, or what should worry Galaxy fans, I guess, is that it's the same stuff over and over again. No one's making excuses, but everyone's offering up the same post-game comments, which is, we don't know what happened, but we're going to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, it's starting to be, not only a broken record, but it's starting to be absurd in just the way that you're seeing this team go about it. And it's starting, I know it's frustrating fans. From an outsider's perspective, just watching this team, I find it unbelievably interesting that you have, realistically some good veterans, Kevin, who could be the leaders on this team. And there seems to be infighting there. I get that losing will make things, more difficult to get along, right? So that meshing, it's harder to do when you're losing. But this isn't about wins and losses right now. Which I think that turned. This is why this game is different. This 3-0 loss to Seattle is different than any of the other games before. The other games before, again, there was competition. They were competitive. They understand. This game was about, unfortunately for Curt Onalfo, it was about not having a team that was prepared. It looked like the team didn't know what they were doing. It looked like there was no cohesive game plan, or if there was a game plan, Kevin, I don't know that anybody understood it. And you made a comment to me in the press box. You said something to the effect of, it's starting to look a little bit like Jurgen Klinsmann and some of those later Jurgen Klinsmann before he got fired, which was, players not understanding their roles, not doing what apparently Klinsmann wanted him to do. But I mean, ultimately this led to a mess on the field, and that's what you saw. The Galaxy were tactically naive. A couple of those guys look like traffic cones out there. It's embarrassing for a 5-time MLS Cup champion team who is, yes, rebuilding and doing all these things and trying to, show the new way. Basically they're telling us, Kevin, everything's fine while the house is burning down. And lots of people have made that joke, but that's what it feels like.
I want to double down on that Jurgen Klinsmann thing a little bit, because I don't think Jurgen Klinsmann was fired for losing to Mexico and Costa Rica. I think that was it was the symptoms that led to that disease. I mean, those are the two best teams in CONCACAF. It's no embarrassment to lose to those two guys. You lost Costa Rica on the road. I mean, you could almost expect results like that. The reason he was fired is because the team was in disarray. You had, Michael Bradley and Jermaine Jones coming to the sidelines in the Mexico game when Tim Howard was injured and demanding a change of formation, and then the coach relenting and doing that. So it was the team had failed to respond to the coach, and the coach had lost control, and that is what yesterday looked like. Now, I have to say, Curt didn't always seem to have answers for some of the problems, or at least he didn't share them publicly. Let's say that, because right. Curt does not like to air his dirty laundry in public, and I'm totally behind him with that. I like the idea that he doesn't want to scold his players through the media, but yesterday he clearly did not have an answer for what was going on. He clearly lost control of the team and lost control of the game, and that's where it reminds me of Jurgen Klinsmann. It's not so much that they lost to the Sounders, the defending champions. It's that they looked horrible doing it, and nothing that they didn't seem to have an answer for anything Seattle did.
Yeah, let's get to some of. I actually pulled the post-game audio from Curt's press conference. Kevin and I were both there. I got to ask a question. I think, Kevin, you got to ask a question. We both got our questions in. There were only 5 questions. It was a quick one. You can watch the video on the LA Galaxy website if you want to, but why do that when you can just listen to into it here. So let's hear Curt Onalfo talking about the dismal first half and it not getting any better in the second.
Dismal, terrible first half. Better second half, but not good enough.
I always write down little things, Kevin, to tell me like which clip is which, and I forgot that on this particular clip, I just basically said exactly what Onalfo said because it was so short. All right, so there it is. That was his first sort of question. Sometimes it takes a little time for everybody to warm up. So I asked why the Boateng sub, and here was Curt Onalfo's response.
Unfortunately, he took the sacrifice, but we were just getting overloaded and overrun in the midfield. We were defending the entire half, so we had to make a change where we added another midfielder, and it actually immediately worked. We started actually gaining momentum, and then we got scored with the third goal on the counter. If we didn't give that goal away, I think everything would have changed.
This is the one I have to stop, and we have to focus on this one, Kevin, because I can't. It's difficult watching the game that I watched and seeing Boateng getting subbed off. I look at that and say, okay, that's a panic move. You realize that everything was happening. You thought of something to try to fix it by putting Baxter Husidic into this game to try to give you more of a central midfield position because your two central midfielders were spending times at basically opposite ends of the field with Jermaine Jones running forward and Joao Pedro usually running backwards. So you put Baggio somewhere in between them, and you took away one of the things that could have neutralized a lot of Seattle's attack, which is a speedy winger to get into space and to actually be able to link up to somebody. You had, Kevin, you said it, plan A was Alessandrini, right? And plan B is Emma Boateng, and those two work really well together, and you took that off because your midfield couldn't hold together, and your team was unprepared for what Seattle brought to the table.
And the problem was not Boateng. In fact, if you want to look at it another way, and I am not an MLS coach, or I wouldn't be doing this show with you, I'd be out coaching a team.
Right.
But it seems to me that the Galaxy were getting hammered by Jordan Morris, who is just flat out blindingly fast. So you take your fastest player out of the game. Now, yes, Emma Boateng is not a defender, but he's the only guy that had a chance of keeping up with Morris and getting in his way a little bit. And you take him out and you bring in Husidic. I love Baggio. I might be his biggest fan. I know he's not the most popular guy among the fans always, but I love him. Bringing him in, I didn't have a problem with that. I have a problem with who came out. Joao Pedro was the guy that, to me, has been struggling the most. I think maybe they could have stopped the bleeding a little bit if they made that change. Unlikely, but I think that would have been a better solution. It seems to me that with Gio and Pedro, with the money they're getting paid, Pedro as a TAM player, Gio as a DP, it's almost like management has told Curt Onalfo these guys are going to stay on the field until they vomit blood. So don't even think about taking them out. I don't know how else to explain the fact that Pedro gets to play 90 minutes every week. That change was interesting. And then when Curt says, it worked, we took the momentum back. Seattle scored with 6 minutes or 5 minutes after they made that change on a counterattack through the midfield. So I don't think it worked.
No, and I think he has a habit. I'll say he has a habit. You can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but whenever he gets questioned on like a tactical change or on a sub, he has a tendency to tell you, and it worked. That seems to be one of his things. And you look there and I say, no, it didn't work. What would have worked better for me? And one of the geniuses, I'm going to tip my hat to Brian Schmetzer of the Seattle Sounders because this game plan they put together was, I think, strong. It was as it should be. But one of the things they did better than any team I've seen is that they attacked the side Alessandrini was on, knowing that Alessandrini gets forward into the attack and doesn't defend. And by making him stay back, they limited a lot of his offensive production. So he couldn't go forward because he had to come back. So if we're talking about that, and you need to free up your designated player and get him away from things, why wouldn't you switch with Alessandrini and Boateng, just switch sides with them and have Boateng play against Morris, and then you'd have that speed matchup that you wanted, Kevin, and you'd get Alessandrini away from the side that they were attacking, so that way the Galaxy could attack from that side. So just switch sides on him, which he's capable of doing. That's not an issue. Yes, Boateng, can play on either side as well. Just make this change in order to do that. I'm with you. If you're going to bring in Baggio, take off Joao Pedro. But this, to me, anytime a coach makes a first half sub that isn't injury related, and this is not injury related. This was a tactical switch. Onalfo just told you. We heard in the press box as soon as Boateng came off the field. About a minute after that, we got confirmation there was no injury. All right, that is what the LA Galaxy PR department told us, and Onalfo didn't say there was an injury or there were any issues in the press conference, and he was given the ability to do that. All right, that's what my question was. Explain yourself. Tell us why you made this, and tell us if there was something that we didn't know about Emma Boateng, and we have not received any of that information. So you have to. He told you it was tactical. We're going with it. It was tactical, Kevin. It was. It's a panic move, in my opinion. Now, granted, I think he had to do something, Kevin, at that time, but I don't think that was the right move, and I think that that showed how much trouble they were in. Obviously, already down 2-0, go down 3-0 before the first half is even over.
Well, let's go back to where they, as you just mentioned, where they were in the game. It was 2-0. Yes, Seattle had scored one goal on their own. The second one was an own goal. Ashley Cole almost made a good play and just deflected the ball past Brian Rowe trying to make a sliding clearance. So it's 2-0. Yes, you're behind 2-0. You're getting outplayed, but really Seattle's only scored one goal on you, right?
Right.
And so, as you said, the players on the field said, whoa, wait a minute. We're making a first half sub. We're taking out our second most effective offensive player this season. We're taking him out in a game that we're losing 2-0 in the 37th minute. I mean, if we could see it was a panic move from the press box, the players must have been startled even more so. Now, there were a little bit of gossip afterwards that maybe Emma and a couple other players were a little under the weather, might have been sick. Didn't look like that. And as you said, I'm going to say it again, Onalfo does not throw his players under the bus and does not make excuses for them. But that's not an excuse. If you just said, we were looking for a little more help in the midfield and Emma wasn't feeling well, we decided to get him out of there, fine. That's not throwing the guy under the bus. No. If you're sick, you're sick. But he didn't. If that was true, Curt didn't go there and didn't use that. He just said it was a straight tactical error in a game in which you've only given up one goal and you're 8 minutes away from halftime where you're going to go in and presumably regroup. Instead, you make the change. Seattle comes straight to the midfield, scores another goal. It's 3-0, game over.
I have to tell you, I went to training on Saturday. I know you guys heard the podcast. All our listeners heard the podcast of me talking to Jelle Van Damme at training on Saturday. And then we also had on the show Taylor Twellman from ESPN who did the analysis from the or for that game. So they were both on that show, and I put up a podcast. If you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen to it. Just some interesting talk there. It's not very long, like 17 minutes long, just a little quick update. But, I was listening to Onalfo talk, and, I was overhearing the conversation that he was having on the field, and he was talking about how positive he was about Giovanni Dos Santos and how he was ready to explode. And he was talking about, how good he thought João Pedro has been. That he had a bad game against Vancouver, but he thought he played much better in Orlando. And the games before that, he thought he was doing very good. And he was positive on these guys over and over. Now, Kevin, I'm not one, and like you said, he doesn't throw his guys under the bus, right? And you don't have to throw guys under the bus. If you want to be honest about some things, you can be honest about things without throwing guys under the bus. You could say something, if you asked me how Gio was playing and I didn't want to be negative, I'm really like, Gio's had some good runs. Obviously, we need him to step up and start scoring some goals. I think he's that player. I think he can do that for us. And, I think that it's up to us to make sure that we get him involved in the game, right? That's not a way. I didn't throw Gio under the bus at any time during that.
Well, let me help you set up the clip I think you're going to play next. What Curt said on Thursday when he did meet the media and speak on the record is he said about Gio, he said, I actually think he's playing really, really well. I believe in him. The goals and assists will come. Sometimes you don't necessarily get rewarded for good play. Gio, was excellent in the second half and a big reason why we played so well in the second half against Orlando. It's just a matter of time, and all that stuff is going to take care of itself. That's Curt Onalfo talking about Gio Dos Santos.
All right, so our colleague Josie Becker, who writes for MLSsoccer.com, asked this question, and normally I cut out the reporter asking the question, but I want you to hear it. I'm going to try to jack up the volume as much as I can, so that way you can listen to it. She's not next to the mic, so I'm going to jack it up, and then you can hear Curt's response and everything that sort of transpired afterwards. So here it is, Curt Onalfo post-game press conference. The question comes from Josie Becker of MLSsoccer.com.
Josie?
Gio missed what looked like a pretty good opportunity. We've talked a lot about moving and start scoring goals again. You've seemed to be positive about this right around the corner, but is it starting to become a concern?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Curt.
Press conference over. There you go. Josie asks a question. We get a I'm not going to comment on that. So basically, if you didn't hear it, and I understand it's, again, she's not next to the mic's not anywhere near her. But Josie was asking, you've been very positive with Gio, and even though he struggled to find some goals and he hasn't scored and all this stuff. So she's giving him basically all the stuff that he said, Kevin. And then she asks, is it time for concern? He hasn't scored any goals. Is it time for concern? And Curt Onalfo says, I'm not going to comment on that, and walks out. Basically, Kevin, he didn't walk out. I want to say that. Brendan Hannon, who's LA Galaxy PR, was it Director of Communications? He has a long title, Kevin, and I never get it right or wrong or anything like that. But anyway, Brendan Hannon ended that press conference at that time, and then he got up and he walked out. All right. Well,
yeah, because the media room, the people in the press conference room after that answer, I think we were all flabbergasted. There was just like, there's no sense in going forward with any more of these questions because clearly there's a disconnect between what we all saw and what Curt saw during the game, and so let's just agree to disagree and move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that goes that way, and either it's Kevin, like I think that your position is that Curt doesn't want to throw anybody under the bus, so he's just not going to say anything, right? Or the alternative to that position on Giovanni Dos Santos is I'm tired of explaining this to people who clearly don't understand. And so I'm just not going to comment on it anymore because regardless of what I say, you guys are going to write whatever you want to write. That's my take on that. And I think you're probably right, Kevin, but I wanted to give the alternative view of that just in case people wanted to see, we just what we're trying to look into that, what we're trying to see with that comment. But the no comment, I'm not going to comment on that, always speaks louder than actually just answering the question. Right.
And I think that, Curt's answer to me about Gio, when he went on and talked about how great Gio was playing, I mean, I think a lot of, and I'm not going to say Curt doesn't believe that, but I think most objective observers will say that wasn't honest, that Gio has not been playing well. Curt doesn't have to give an answer like that. Curt could simply say, Gio's coming along, Gio's fine. The whole offense has to get on track. It's just not one guy. There's a million different things he could have said. He didn't necessarily have to go out and say, all you guys think the sky is blue. I happen to be the only one that knows the sky is red, and just give sort of a bizarre answer that seems to challenge, credulity.
Well, I mean, he has to understand that his seat just got a lot warmer, and a lot of questions. We have a lot of listener questions. We have a lot of things, a lot of audio to play you from the CoG hotline as well. We're going to play those during this show because, quite honestly, it's news right now. As we get closer onto our Thursday show, we're going to be looking ahead to Philadelphia. But, I mean, this Philadelphia game ends up being, ridiculously important. And it's not necessarily important in the large scheme of things in terms of standings or anything else. Surely the LA Galaxy need to get a win, Kevin. I mean, they've lost 3 of their first 4 home games at StubHub Center, so they can't afford to lose again. And this was a 3-game homestand that the Galaxy were looking forward to as a chance to, get 9 points out of 3 games. And now your best opportunity is to get 6 points. Beating Philadelphia, who doesn't have a win in Major League Soccer yet, is mandatory all of a sudden. It has taken on a completely different thing for different reasons. But I mean, we were talking about it before we started here, Kevin. Philadelphia becomes very important all of a sudden.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is, if they cannot beat Philadelphia, then it looks like, I don't know. I don't know what the Galaxy are thinking, but if they can't beat Philadelphia, a team that hasn't won this year, and by the way, a team that gave up a 3-0 lead at home in its last game and tied, played to a 3-3 draw, a team that has to come across country to play this game, it just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of hope. Now, it depends on how they play. If they were to play a terrific game and lose on a bad bounce, okay. But you and I were talking about this yesterday. I really thought that with, and I still think that with the Galaxy going with the young guys, going with the academy kids, they brought Curt over because he has relationships with these guys. They trust him. He trusts them. That seemed to be a good idea. But and he would be the one that would bring the kids into MLS. But right now what those kids are learning is they're learning that there's no tactical changes you can make against a team like Seattle. They're learning that veterans can walk right past the coach without shaking his hand after a game. They're learning that what you say after a game is, I have no idea what just happened out there, but we're going to sit down and talk about it. They're not learning the right lessons. And so I thought Curt was going to be there no matter what happened. I really thought Onalfo had a year plus to get this program working. If they look bad and they look disjointed and they, they argue with themselves and some of the things the players did this week, I don't know if Curt's going to survive a loss to Philadelphia. I really thought he was going to be, as you were talking yesterday, both of us thought that he was secure for a year, but we both sort of started walking that back a little bit. I do think that he's on the hot seat. I do think, certainly not for the team. The season's not even a quarter of the way over yet. But for Curt Onalfo, I think this game is a must-win game.
Yeah, it gets really interesting. I mean, it reminds me of all the fervor around Siggy Schmidt before he got fired from the Seattle Sounders. It has that same feeling to it. And it's, again, I would give Curt more time, and I would let him grow into this with those guys, bringing those younger kids up. But you look at this, and you're saying, we can't have this keep going on. If you've lost the team, I can't have you be the coach anymore. And that's what it is. It's not the losses. And it's not even the way that they lost in this particular time. It really is all about the way the coaching and losing the team and not being able to get the players to do what he wants them to do, and not there's no respect there. It doesn't seem to be any respect. If there's respect in that locker room right now for Curt Onalfo, I would be amazed. If we're reading it that far wrong, Kevin, I would be amazed. It's just simply not there. You can't have Emma Boateng is not a veteran, Kevin. All right, and Emma Boateng walked right past Curt Onalfo's outstretched hand. He was upset after the game. Emma Boateng is in the back of the locker room talking with Dave Romney. Right, and we can't hear what they're talking about, and I'm just going to speculate, and I don't care. I'm going to speculate at this point. But you see Emma Boateng drawing on his own hand, showing Dave Romney, and it looks like they're talking tactics. All right, because that's the only thing I could think of that you'd be talking on your hand. Is like, I'm here, and this person's here, and then here. It's like they're trying to figure it out in the locker room themselves right now, because they don't. I feel like they don't know where the answer of what happened on Sunday against Seattle. I don't know if they're going to get that answer from the coaching staff, and that's the problem. Yes, Curt Onalfo got out-coached. Losing the team is not acceptable, and I don't think that Chris Klein is going to have much choice if it continues, even if they beat Philadelphia. I mean, it becomes to the point now, Kevin, where if it stays in sort of the same way with the players upset, with them yelling at each other, with the dysfunction that is going on the field, if that continues off the field and you get past Philadelphia, which I fully expect the LA Galaxy to win that game, but if you get past Philadelphia and then you have Chicago come in, it's even to the point where if they have another performance like they did against Seattle, against Chicago, heads are rolling. People are going to get fired. And while I think they don't have the horsepower, I think they have some talent. You looked across the field at Seattle and the talent that they had, and you're going to tell me that you want to compare that to the LA Galaxy and the talent that they have right now? There's no comparison. They're short on horsepower, and that's a front office thing for me. But what happened on Sunday with Seattle is a Curt Onalfo thing, and it's quite honestly, it's something that could end up costing him his job, which is crazy to me. I would have told you were nuts 2 weeks ago.
Well, Curt Onalfo in his last two jobs, the Galaxy, and before that, I believe it was DC United. He's won 5 of his last 25 games as an MLS head coach, and again, we got to look at every game and say, well, is it really fair to look at the record and just the pure numbers? But and maybe not. But again, I'm going to go back to what people were saying in the locker room yesterday, as you're talking about, where Romain Alessandrini says it was the worst game for the LA Galaxy. He said, I can't explain what had happened this afternoon. Jelle Van Damme, the captain, said, I have no explanation for this. I don't know how. He said, I thought we were ready for it. I have no explanation for what happened. When players are throwing their hands up and saying, we have no idea what just happened, veteran players, a guy like Alessandrini, 10 years in Ligue 1 in France, and Jelle Van Damme, who's played in Belgium for a decade, veteran players who say, we have no idea what just happened. that's really dismaying.
Yeah, it is. And this always happens to me the day after I listen to some audio and I listen to, sort of the players talking, and I always think of that one question that I absolutely should have asked. And to the players in the locker room afterwards, should have asked if they thought they were properly prepared for that game. Because in my mind, it looked like that team wasn't anywhere near ready to go at kickoff. I think they had one foray forward. Giassi Zardes got the ball. It was like early. It was like the second minute or something like that. And then it was Seattle. And it was all Seattle. And Seattle just pinned them back and they held them there. And the Galaxy would try to break out, and the passing was horrible and the positioning was horrible and everything went so bad, so fast that there's no way this team had a cohesive game plan in their mind of how they wanted to attack Seattle. It looked like they were completely and 100% reactive, and with Onalfo making that first half sub, it showed that he was reactive as well. And since when did the LA Galaxy, Kevin, become the team that adjusts to other teams? Usually Bruce Arena would force his will on other teams. They had the talent to do it, and they would go out there and they would make other teams adjust to them. And what you're seeing right now in this Seattle game was a LA Galaxy team that was 100% reactive, and that's worrying. That's a front office problem. That's a coaching problem. That's all of those things, and it's coming to a head. This is what's happening, and it's not conducive to what the LA Galaxy normally do. And,
well, let me take a step beyond that. I think your analogy to the Ziggy Schmidt situation is really good. I actually talked to Ziggy. I interviewed Ziggy a week before he got fired, and the mood around the team, around the Sounders at that point, was very much one of resignation. Like, it's just not working. You can't replace 28 players. Maybe the 28 players are the problem, but there's one coach and 28 players. Realistically, you got to get rid of the coach, not the players. Turned out to be a great move because under Brian Smetcher, they went on one MLS Cup, and you kind of get the same impression here. Would Curt be more successful? Would Curt Onalfo be more successful if he had different players? Maybe, maybe not. But there's one coach and 28 players. It doesn't take a math major to figure out if you're going to make a change, what the change is that you make. However, this situation is unique to the Galaxy because the Galaxy have, as we talked about, decided to change the way they build their team. They're using the academy system. They're going with LA Galaxy 2 players. They're not relying, yes, they have 3 DPs, but they're not relying on DPs or even TAM money players necessarily for the majority of the team. They're relying on young academy players. More than half the Galaxy team have started fewer than 14 MLS games in their career. So it's a young team, it's an inexperienced team. That's the one Curt Onalfo was put in charge of. But that's the philosophy that Dan Beckerman of AEG, who is the parent company of the Galaxy, Dan Beckerman, Pete Vagenas, the general manager, Chris Klein, the president, Curt Onalfo, all these guys, this is the philosophy that they want to follow. This is their game plan going forward. So in a sense, it's an indictment on all of them. Now, do you replace Curt and say the game plan still works? We're going to just get another coach in here and he can make these players win. Do they look at it and say, maybe this is a ridiculous attempt that we made to make a USL team play in MLS and expect it to win? Do they do that kind of soul searching? So I think there's going to be, if this thing continues to spiral downhill, I think you're going to see a lot of soul searching, a lot of tough questions answered. I think you're going to see a lot of people trying to cover their butt, frankly. And it may not be as simple as just changing one guy. Maybe they do have to think about the philosophy again. And if that happens, does that mean more heads roll? Does that mean whoever in the front office, whether it was Chris or Vagenas or whoever it was, if they're the one that sold AEG on this new philosophy, does that mean they go too? This could be the beginning, again, if they don't beat Philadelphia. If they beat Philadelphia, maybe things turn around. As you said, they have Chicago coming in. Then after that, they play Minnesota and San Jose on the road. They should be successful there. They can come up. They can win, 3 of their next 5 games, and then this conversation is ridiculous. But if they continue to spiral downhill, how many changes have to be made before they can stop the bleeding?
There's some fence mending that has to happen. All right, there's some stuff that somebody asked, when do we start hearing about a players only meeting right? And I responded back, I go, I'd be shocked if that hasn't already happened. I'd be shocked if there hasn't already been a meeting between the players to say, hey, we need to pull this together. And even if that means that, Jermaine Jones thinks he's the coach and he's out there being the coach, and, or Jelle Van Damme steps forward as the captain, if they're going to, sort of usurp Curt's authority and decide to do it together, that sometimes that works too, all right? Sometimes that can work too, but it shows that there's something seriously wrong, and that's what you saw against Seattle. I have some calls that I wanted to get to. I told you we'd play some voicemails from the CoG hotline. Remember, put this number in your phone. Just remember, you can call it any time. All right, I'm never going to answer, so it's there, and the recordings come through. So if you have a really crazy dream about Giovanni Dos Santos and he scores 27 goals in an MLS season, you can wake up in the middle of the night and dial that number and get right in. But the number is 949-385-2641. That's 949-385-2641, the CoG hotline number. Call it anytime, especially after games. But some of you decided to call, so let's get one or two good calls in here real quick. And so let's start with this first one. I call it Gio is the Invisible Man.
So we've known this team was built around Giovanni Dos Santos. Well, turns out that's not a good foundation. The man is invisible. You can't build around the invisible man. Yes, he has absolute moments of brilliance in his career, but when it comes down to it, he is not a team player. He makes other players fill in for him not handling his responsibilities. He wants glory, but he doesn't want to put in the hard work to make it happen. You can build around Alessandrini. You can't build around Dos Santos. It's time. I don't know what the rules are for DP contracts, but he's got to go, and he's got to go as quickly as possible. He's just not the man. Everyone has to cover for him. That pulls them out of position. That pulls folks behind them out of position, and folks behind them out of position. And the next thing you know, everybody's completely out of shape. So yeah, time for Gio to go. I'm done with him. I'm done with Onalfo. I'm done with Vainas. I'm pretty much done with Klein even at this point. But Dos Santos needs to be the first to go because he is the real problem. Thanks. Great show. Bye.
All right, there we go. Again, caller etiquette says you got to at least say your name and where you're calling from whenever you do this. But I appreciate that take. So it's the Gio take, Kevin. One that I don't think is wildly out of place, and then throwing everybody else out there. What did you think of Giovanni Dos Santos in this particular game, and is it just another reason that the LA Galaxy are struggling?
It's Gio links to so many different people. He links to the midfield. He links to Giassi. Giassi's on an island by himself if Gio doesn't get him the ball, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of chemistry there. I did see flashes of competence from Gio yesterday. They didn't last very long, but Gio did make a couple of good passes, one or two that should have led to chances and didn't. He also had a chance to shoot on goal himself, and that didn't work out very well. He has less than a shot on goal a game this year, so he's just really not producing chances, and he's not setting other people up. But it is weird, as the caller said. There are stretches where Gio just simply disappears. I remember covering the game in Vancouver and being in the press box, and I didn't remember seeing Gio, and I looked at the lineup sheet. Yeah, he's in the lineup, and I actually turned to someone next to me and said, "Is Giovanni Dos Santos out there? Because I don't see him anywhere." He just literally disappears for times. And Gio is a guy who played in World Cups, played in 2 World Cups. He's had some remarkable success with the Mexican team. He's played well in other places, but he's also, when he came to the Galaxy, he was a guy that had played for 8 different teams in 10 years. And the MO seems to be unbelievable talent, unbelievable skill, not a whole lot of dedication, not a whole lot of heart. I mean, and I'm not judging him. I'm just telling you what I've heard, and what I've seen doesn't seem to challenge that assertion a whole lot. And, maybe Gio's comfortable. He's signed through 2019. Yeah. He's got a soccer camp going. He's got other things on the side. Maybe he is just content being a good soccer player and no longer wants to be a great soccer player. I don't know, but a guy with his skill and his talent to disappear for, this many long stretches this early in a season when a lot is on the line for a lot of people. And again, as the caller said, this was supposed to be his team. People ask me, what do you mean about his team? He was going to be the central focal figure on this team. It wasn't going to be Robbie Keane. He's gone. It wasn't going to be Steven Gerrard. There were no other big-name DPs. People didn't know a lot about Alessandrini when he came in. This was Gio's chance to seize the team and turn it into his, make it the Gio Dos Santos Galaxy. That train's left the station, and now you again, they're paying him so much money, they don't want him sitting on the bench. But you got to wonder, with Curt, if Curt Onalfo's job's on the line, does he use McInerney, and does he use Jack McBean this next week, because he needs a win?
Yeah, he needs a win. I mean, this person who called in, saying, what can we do to get rid of Gio? And that you're not doing anything. Gio is there. There is no Chivas USA currently to offload somebody like Juan Pablo Angel whenever he doesn't work out. That was fortunate for the Galaxy, and, God only knows how that deal actually got done. But you look at Giovanni Dos Santos, he is a fixture for this team unless somebody wants to buy him from the LA Galaxy, which his current form would certainly show that that's not what's going to happen. Unless that happens, he's going to be on the team. Like you said, he signed through 2019. Get used to Giovanni Dos Santos being on this LA Galaxy team and, sucking up a large portion of the designated player money. That is what's happening right now. That's not to say he can't be a talent. Kevin, you're right. He can be a talent. He just hasn't shown that he is a talent right now.
And he has the ability. He could score 6 goals against Philadelphia without breaking a sweat. I mean, I've seen him do some things that are remarkable. And that's why I don't think it's fitness. I don't think it's skill. I don't think it's talent. I just think it's applying it, dedication, whatever you want to call it, willpower, whatever intangible you want to describe it with. I think that's what the thing is. I think the skill and the talent is still there. He's just doesn't seem to be all that interested. And
again, if you want to point this back to what we've been talking about before with Curt Onalfo, it's that Onalfo hasn't figured out a way to get Jermaine Jones, Giovanni Dos Santos, and Joao Pedro and Jelle Van Damme and all these guys down the center of the spine playing together. And that's another issue. The LA Galaxy strikers have scored all of 1 goal and 0 goals from the run of play. Giovanni Dos Santos has the only goal for an LA Galaxy's forward striker, whatever you want to call, and it came on a penalty kick that Dave Romney drew. All right, that's it. That's where you got all of your good stuff from. All right, let's go to another call that we have. I like this one. Here we go. Let's play it.
All right, so this is Jason. I'm from Aspera, California. I just got done watching the game. 3-0 Seattle Sounders. I truly have nothing to say because as someone who holds this team with high regards, remembering as a little kid when Beckham came in 07, I believe, remembering I was so excited and I started getting into soccer more and more. And then seeing this team just go from such an excellent period of time to what it is today. I believe that in the beginning of the season that Onalfo was going to do a good job, that Pete Vainus and Chris Klein did a good job with promoting homegrown players, Bradford Jamison, Raul Mendiola, Jack McBean. But today's game proved that we need a change in either the front office, we need a change in players, in management. The whole team is just in disarray. I just can't, so.
All right, there you go. See, listen, I was going to edit that call, Kevin. I was going to take out some of the pauses and stuff, but the angst that is available from Jason on this call is exactly why it all needed to be left in there. I think that sometimes people in the front office forget that there are people out here who live and die by this team, who breathe this in, and to see the downward spiral that this has taken, and granted from an outside perspective, Kevin, I've told you it might be really entertaining to see a dumpster fire up close. The bottom line is that this is a storied MLS team. It is the standard bearer for MLS teams. They have 5 MLS Cups. And they just got played off the field in 45 minutes. And anybody who says that the second half was better than the first half, I will disagree with 100% because Seattle said, hey, 3-0 sounds good enough to me, and that was it. All right? They didn't have to do anything else.
A couple of things about that call. First of all, I think we need to get the suicide prevention hotline in touch with that guy.
We'll find the number.
The other thing about it was, the Galaxy, they're the Yankees of Major League Soccer. Winning is not, playing well is not enough. It's winning. This is the team that won 5 MLS Cups. I think they've been to the conference final something like 12 or 13 times. The statistics are amazing. This is a winning franchise. And the other thing that came through on that call, and fans expect them to win, but the other thing that came through on that call, and you and I have talked about it, a lot of people looked at this idea of bringing up the academy kids and giving them a chance and bringing Curt over. I think some people had their doubts, but everybody seemed to be willing to go along with it. As that caller was, hey, you know what? That's what they want to do. Sounds like a good idea. Let's give it a shot. We've invested a lot of money in this academy. So the Galaxy at some point are going to turn around and say, nobody gave us a chance. You know what? Everybody gave you a chance. Everybody was behind this. It's just not working out. Another thing why the caller was why that call was going on, I looked up some stats here. If you're an offensive-minded player, Josh, how many shots on goal should you average a game? Not shots on goal.
Shots on goal. I would figure that if you're an offensive striker, you should get two or three shots on goal per game.
Okay.
I mean, is that too many?
Well, Alessandrini is, as you know, the leading scorer. He has 11 shots on goal in 7 games, so he's pretty close to that. But then go down the list. Giovanni Dos Santos, 5 shots on goal in 6 games. Jermaine Jones is third on the team. He has three shots on goal in 6 games. Dave Romney has 2. And then this is the striking one. You get down to Giassi Zardes, your national team player. He has 2 shots on goal in 4 games and 3 starts. 2 shots on goals in 284 minutes. I don't think that's Giassi's problem. I think it's the people around him. Giassi is the forward striker. Somebody has to get the ball to him before he can get a shot on goal.
Yeah.
And when he has 2 shots on goal and 4 shots total in 4 games, I don't think that's Giassi's problem. It's up to Jermaine Jones and Giovanni Dos Santos and other players to get the ball to him, and that's not happening.
No, it's not happening, and I agree with that. All right. All the rest of the calls we're going to go ahead and play at the very end of the show, so whenever you hear the music and all that fun stuff, don't go anywhere. Listen to the rest of these calls. I want to make sure that we get to all of them and everybody who called in. I appreciate. You know what? I'm throwing that out for a second. I want to play this last one. I like this one, Kevin. This is a good one, and I think this is an important thing for everybody to hear, including the LA Galaxy front office. So here is, we'll say, sort of the last call for right now.
Josh, the last thing you said in your messaging machine was, we hope to see you at the next LA Galaxy home game. Now, my question is, why should I go to the next LA Galaxy home game when we are such an awful team? Like, do you really think that we could beat Orange County SC, who the LA Galaxy they tied last night, if I remember correctly? Do you think we could beat them? Because we're terrible. We are not a good team. We are no longer a good team. And I'm starting to think we're not a good franchise. We're just not a good club because we have former players running the club who have no idea what they are doing. We have Chris Klein, Pete Vianis, and their protege, Curt Onalfo. They have no idea what they are doing. Subbing out Baggio or subbing in Baggio for Emma Boateng and everything else. You're going to cut me off from here, but just use the front part. All right? God, Galaxy just suck, man. They really just suck. It's not a good team. I don't like going anymore. I don't want to go anymore. Okay, bye, Josh.
My good friend Scott there. My good Scott always is entertaining, that's for sure. Yeah, it's a question. It's a good question. Why?
You know what I was thinking when he was saying that, when he's going down the roster of the front office people? I haven't wanted to invoke the name of Bruce Almighty because I think it's unfair to compare Curt Onalfo with the greatest coach in U.S. soccer history. And that I don't mean that Curt Onalfo cannot be a good coach. I just mean I would hate people to look at my stuff in the LA Times and say, well, he's no Jim Murray. No, I'm not. I'm not going to be Jim Murray. And so to say, well, Curt Onalfo isn't Bruce Arena is an unfair comparison. But I'm wondering, since the front office seems to have few answers as well, I wonder if how much they miss Bruce as well. And to answer the reader's question or the caller's question, I guess one thing I would say is if you're a fan, you're supposed to support the team through thick and thin. But what's interesting about that is when you hear the despair of all the callers, next year they are going to have an alternative. And by the way, yes, LA Galaxy 2 did tie Orange County 1-1.
Yes.
Next year, those disgruntled fans will have an option. They can drive 13 miles up the 110 freeway and watch LAFC. They don't have that option this year, but I think the Galaxy should take that seriously, that if these guys are this disgruntled, they want to walk away from the team. Doesn't sound to me like they want to walk away from soccer. The Galaxy should be concerned.
I am all in favor of people being as loyal as they want to be, Kevin, in terms of their sporting choices. The studies have shown that people aren't very loyal as a general whole in all of sports, that they switch teams all the time. That's sort of what the studies have shown, but at the same time, I understand, if this is your club, the LA Galaxy, and you have been along with them, I started watching this club in 2008 and 2009, and for me, the 2009 season will always be special to me, and that was the year the LA Galaxy went to the MLS Cup and got knocked out in a penalty kick shootout by Real Salt Lake up in Seattle, right? So, I mean, there's lots of sort of history with these things that you can understand. If that's what hooked you, that's what hooked you. But you also get to vote with your money, and you get to vote with whether or not you want to be a season ticket holder. You get to vote with whether or not you are in your seat. The empty seats that you see around, those could be protest seats, all right? Those could be lots of things. So you get to choose that, and I'm never going to tell somebody that they absolutely have to go to the game. But I would say, Scott, that if you wanted to go to the LA Galaxy game this Saturday at 7:30 against the Philadelphia Union, that it might be your best chance at seeing a win for the LA Galaxy than any other time this year. So that's my one pitch to you right now. So if you want to win, perhaps going to the Philadelphia game. Although, if they lose that game, Kevin, I'm also interested to see what the fireworks could possibly be and what the repercussions are from that as well. All right.
Well, the mood around the team reminds me a lot of Chivas USA right now, the despair in the fans. It does seem like Chivas USA, and it was clear that they didn't have an answer for what was ailing them too. I'm not predicting that the Galaxy are ever going to fall to that level, but you did mention the word study, and so I'm going to go off topic real quick just for 1 second because I think this is interesting. There was a study that was released last week by it was a Thomas and Dorothy Levy Center for Study of Los Angeles at Loyola Marymount, and they asked 2,400 adult residents in Los Angeles, what is your favorite professional sports team with LA in its name? And that question is important because that means the Ducks could not be named in this survey, but the Angels could because it's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So anyway, when they asked that question, Dodgers and Lakers get by far the monster share of the response. But the Galaxy got 5%, which wasn't very high, but also the Rams did. And so what that means is among the fans that were surveyed in Los Angeles, the MLS and the NFL, the local teams, got the same amount of fan support. And again, I know it's a little bit lower. It's right after the Angels and Kings. Clippers got 7% in that survey. But I thought that was very interesting when people look at, the NFL is just so much better than MLS as far as the fans and their support. In Los Angeles, MLS and the NFL, the two local teams, they have the same percentage of fans saying that that's their number one team.
That's interesting. That is. It goes to show you again what sort of the sports market in Los Angeles is and how it's so different from a lot of places around the world, and especially around the United States as well. And that also plays into who you support and who you go see and who you want to spend your wonderful, Sunday afternoons, going to watch away from the beach, away from doing things outside here in possibly one of the best climates in the world. That's just my opinion. But yeah.
But if the Galaxy keep playing poorly, does that jinx that? Do people all of a sudden just give up the Galaxy and go cheer for the Rams or the Chargers? If they love the StubHub Center, maybe they just go to Charger games from now on.
Yeah, it could happen. And those are all the decisions. That's why, perhaps the question or perhaps trying to put this plan in place 1 year before LAFC comes into place, Kevin, may be considered one of the most ill-conceived plans that the Galaxy or any team, could have put together. This is just, it seems like the timing is so poor to go through this. You could lose Bruce Arena. That's fine. That was going to happen eventually anyway. Could you have kept him 1 year? Should you have let him even go to the U.S. men's national team? I think that you have to let him go. You have to do that. But you could have gone out and got a big name coaching. And I've been on record as saying that I don't think the LA Galaxy took anybody seriously besides Curt Onalfo, and that could be coming back to kill them right now. And you're doing that before a very well-funded, very high-profile second team in Los Angeles is coming to Major League Soccer. If you saw what happened to the New York Red Bulls and New York City FC, and the support that New York City FC got immediately coming in because they had money behind it, and granted they're playing at, possibly the worst place you could play, which is Yankee Stadium. It's crap. That's a ridiculous thing that happened there. But granted, you look at what they have done. The LA Galaxy could be the second team in Los Angeles very, very quickly. Don't think that this is going to be something that could take 10 years to happen. If the LA Galaxy do not rectify the situation that they are on right now, and that is, not even being competitive against a Western Conference opponent that is technically below you in the standings, by the way, not even being competitive in that game, they will be the second team in Los Angeles, and LAFC will be the first team in Los Angeles. And I don't think anybody saw that coming 5 years ago. I think there's people who are now predicting that is going to happen here in Los Angeles. So
you're absolutely right. And remember, there was a time in the mid 2000s when the Galaxy was the second team. Chivas was the team going to the playoffs. The Galaxy missed 2 or 3 years in a row. So it's not like the Galaxy has always dominated the LA market. But you're absolutely right. And LAFC is an exciting team with a lot of money, big ownership, big personalities. I'm convinced they're going to sign a big name player. All my cards are on Chicharito coming to LA at some point and playing for LAFC. But you try to talk to some of the people at the StubHub Center and some of the people involved with the Galaxy, and they shake their head. They are not buying that. They are sort of arrogant and confident to the point of delusion that could ever happen. And they could very possibly wake up in the middle of next summer and realize that LAFC is selling out and they're getting crowds of 15,000 at StubHub, as they did when Chivas was the dominant team in town. And then how do you turn that around? Because you can't go out and hire Bruce Arena again.
No, listen. Some of this could be an overreaction to a game that, quite honestly, was one of the worst I've ever seen. I can understand that you look at this, the emotions of the fans, just sort of how the Galaxy seem to be handling the situation. All of those things sort of feed into this, the sky is falling type thing. And they could rectify it. They could win against Philadelphia. They could win against Chicago. They could go on the road and beat Minnesota. They could be competitive against San Jose. You could see them growing into this and being okay. But when you look at the team, when you look at the attendance, I think almost 25,000 people were announced at StubHub Center on Sunday. Kevin, I think both you and I say that's not even close to what it looked
off by
like.
About 8 to 10,000, I think.
Yeah, it felt like a 7 or 8,000 short to me. So whenever you look at all those things that are happening here, it feels like a snowball is building. It feels like there's some stuff building up. All right, I want to get to... go ahead.
But before you go, I just want to say one thing about that. You're absolutely right. We could look back at this podcast in August and play these calls again, and we could all have a big laugh because by that time, the Galaxy is in third or fourth place and they're heading toward the playoffs. The team is talented enough to do that. But the reason there's so much angst right now is because that game on Sunday gave you nothing to hold on to. If you're trying to look for positives, there was just absolutely nothing there that you could look at and say, yeah, I see how we could turn around with that. There was nothing for you to hold on to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to play this call because, I'm switching the plan again because this one specifically asks for you, Kevin. So I will play this one. So here's Yossi, and we'll see what he has to say.
Hey there, this is Yossi calling from Fontana. This question is more for Baxter. Give us the scoop. Give us the lowdown. Give us details. Who's doing what, who isn't doing what in the locker room, and why they haven't had a cage fight to settle the score. Honestly, there needs to be a pecking order, and it looks like Jermaine Jones and Yellow Van Dam are really, really kind of just going at it. It's just kind of a power struggle, it looks like. To me, I'm not sure if I'm right or not, but that's what it looks like to me. There's no leadership, and if there is the little leadership that there is on the field, they're bickering amongst each other. So I still stand behind that Jermaine Jones was a terrible signing. And I'm very sad that that the signing, the Joel Pedro, it turned out to be a bust as well. So thanks, Baxter. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Yossi barely got on the show because he addressed you first before me. So I barely...
You want me to answer him?
Yeah, you can answer him. I will allow it this time, but Yossi, next time I get first billing, then Kevin. All right, that's how it works. All right, Kevin, go ahead. What do you think of his?
I from what I've seen, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think that there is a little bit of of a tug of war going on between Jelle Van Damme and Jermaine Jones. Jelle is the captain, but he is a different kind of captain. I don't think I haven't seen a whole lot of yelling and getting in the face. He's the one that try to keep everyone relaxed and keep everyone working together. It's a lot more important a skill than you might think, because you've got 11 different personalities and you've got to get them to subjugate their own best interest for the team. I think Jelle's very good at that. Jermaine is much more emotional, much more an in-your-face kind of a leader, much more of a screamer. And so I do think that those two models, Jermaine Jones has not been shy about speaking up publicly about what he sees as problems with the team. And one of the things that he has seen is Jelle Van Damme pushing too far forward. And he was very open about that first couple of weeks of the season. I don't think that went over very well with Jelle Van Damme. And so I do think there's a little bit of a tension there. And so what happened, by the way, Jermaine Jones, word's getting out. It's been out for a while. He's apparently a very difficult teammate to play with, extremely talented, extremely passionate, but sometimes he's a little bit over the top with some of his criticisms, and he gets players disappointed and gets players questioning themselves. I think that's a reason why you've seen him play with 3 MLS teams in 3 years, and why he's always been such a lightning rod with the national team as well. So the question is, what happens next? You have some other veterans on the team, Ashley Cole, Alice Andrini, even Giassi to a certain degree. Do those guys split off and join Jelle, and all of a sudden it turns into a sort of a gang fight, where people are choosing sides? Or, do people just step back and let those two do it, and then all of a sudden the team's not united? The team was split last year. It was split in 3 ways. You had the European veterans. They were one clique, and that was pretty much Robbie Keane, Steven Gerrard. I think Ashley was probably part of that clique, Nigel when he was there. Then you had the older MLS players, Alan Gordon, McGee, Robbie Rogers. That was the second clique, and the third one was the young MLS guys. And those guys did not hang out together. They did not see eye to eye. They were friendly when they had to be, but the dressing room was split in 3 ways, and that was one of the reasons the Galaxy collapsed, I think down the stretch. You're starting to see that happen again. The locker room is starting to split, and that's the thing that Curt Onalfo needs to be really concerned about. And so when you see players not shaking his hand when he comes off the field, and you don't have to shake coach's hand, but don't show him up in front of an announced crowd of 25,000, which is only 15,000 were there. Don't show him up like that. And then when you have players yelling at each other on the field, that is just that clubhouse disunity, dressing room disunity coming out onto the field, and that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing reports now that that Onalfo isn't necessarily holding the older guys accountable, right? I told you, and I went on this show whenever Onalfo was hired, and I said, listen, this is a guy who gets after his players. And it was well known that, for LA Galaxy 2 games, and for those kids, that he would go and they would watch tape and there would be yelling. All right. And there would be like, you need to do this. This is your responsibility. You need to hold people accountable. And that's not happening right now with the older players. Or at least that's what I'm being led to believe. So that's not happening. If you are treating 2 distinct groups differently, you're certainly not going to have cohesion in the team. And not only that, but it allows the veterans to do exactly what they're doing, which is yell at each other on the field, which is scream at the sideline like Jermaine Jones did, during Orlando. And, maybe that's part of his charm, Kevin. Maybe that Jermaine Jones gets all of his, his anger, and he gets his blood pressure up, and he gets yelling, and then he plays better. And that's one of the things. And so Curt's using that, but that's not what it looks like right now. And that's not what showed against Seattle. And that is a serious problem for the LA Galaxy right now in terms of, them coming together. All right.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things Jermaine is doing is trying to tell, Curt Onalfo, if you're not going to do your job, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get in your face until something happens, either until you tell me, go ahead and play the way I want to play, or until I, Curt Onalfo, make the change. That's how I interpreted that Orlando thing, that Jermaine was unhappy with a teammate, the way he was playing in the formation they were playing, and he protested to the coach. That's how I looked at that. And Jermaine is a very emotional guy. A guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's a very good player. And some people will look at that emotion and say that's exactly what we want, and other people will look at that and say that's really not helpful. It's not conducive to what we're trying to accomplish there. And the jury's too early to see how that's going to work out with the Galaxy. But right now it seems to me that Jermaine Jones and Jelle Van Damme are mixing sort of like oil and vinegar, and it's just not producing the kind of results the Galaxy want.
Yeah, it's not good. All right, let's get to some listener questions. We asked for them. You hit us up on Twitter. You send us emails. You can always email us at cornerofthegalaxy@gmail.com. You can tag either Kevin at kbaxter11, at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Any of those ways get you onto the show to ask a question. So let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. That was my only Sound of Music reference for this show, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. This is LA Galaxy on Reddit, so they run the LA Galaxy Reddit site. So if you're not a Reddit fan, you can go over there on Reddit, follow the LA Galaxy subreddit. So they asked, any possible reason why we didn't see Jack McInerney yesterday? And he wasn't even on the bench. That's the question. Kevin, why don't you take this one? Go ahead.
Yeah, I talked to Jack on Thursday, and he told me that he just wasn't fit, or actually Friday, I guess it was, that he just wasn't fit. He'd only been, in training camp for a couple of days. He had been off a month since Portland cut him, and he just wasn't physically ready to play. He does think that he'll be ready to play in the Philadelphia game, and I do think he wants to play against Philadelphia because that was the team that drafted him and then originally traded him. So I think there's a good chance you'll see him next week. You didn't see him this week because he just simply is not fit yet.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. That's where we're at. All right, James asks, how long does Curt get? Will the front office admit they got it wrong, or will they just see it out until the ship has sunk? And we've talked a lot about Curt Onalfo, and how long he gets. I would say, if you asked me this last week, James, he has until the rest of the year. If he's losing this team, like it seems like he's losing this team, if he loses to Philadelphia, he will go. He will go. And will the front office ever admit that they got it wrong with him? I think that they're going to see this as them rescuing the Galaxy, so I think that they're going to take the hero role if they have to get rid of Curt Onalfo here in the next month or so. It's a shorter timeline than I ever thought would be possible, but that's what we do on this show. We give you what we think at the time, and our opinions are allowed to change, and my opinion has changed very rapidly in the course of one game. Onalfo could go against Philadelphia. That's my guess. That was Kevin's guess as well. I don't know that there's a whole bunch of people saying that that's not true. It may always take a little bit longer than we think, Kevin. It may always be like a game or two, or a month or two longer than you think, but I could also see them pulling the trigger very rapidly.
And then the question becomes, one thing that a lot of fans sometimes don't understand, a lot of people don't understand, I shouldn't just say fans, is firing a coach, firing a manager, that's only the first half of the equation. Who do you replace them with? Because if you don't have someone who's better, why fire the guy you have? So the question then becomes, if you're going to go down that road, and we don't know that the Galaxy will, are thinking about that, but the question becomes, then who do you replace them with? Given the combustibility,
Yes.
combustion in the Galaxy dressing room right now, I think you need a guy who's been around, who's seen everything, done everything, who can get the respect of the veterans and get the awe of the younger players, and a guy who's not working right now, and that guy's right up the highway. I think Ziggy Schmidt might be, as an interim guy, not as a long-term guy, but I think Ziggy Schmidt might be somebody that they might consider. I think he could be a good fit in an interim role. He's not the guy that's going to take this experiment forward.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they go Ziggy. The other name, and there are people who are asking us this a lot, the other name that sort of gets thrown around a bunch right now is Bob Bradley. There's been a lot of Bob Bradley talk to LAFC. Is this a chance for the LA Galaxy to sweep in and grab Bob? I think it could be. I think if you're looking for a guy who knows Jermaine Jones, who knows how to get stuff out of him, Bob Bradley isn't the worst person to pick in this particular thing. It would be interesting to see if the Galaxy could lure him, because, Kevin, we were talking about the Galaxy making cost-conscious decisions. Bob Bradley, you open the bank for. You have to pay him a lot of money.
And does Bob Bradley want to come into that kind of situation? I mean, you can look at that two ways, too. He's coming into a mess. He can't do any worse, so he's going to look like the savior if he rescues it. And if he doesn't, it can be kind of a Swansea City thing. It's like, you guys, I never had a chance here.
Right.
I don't know that Bob Bradley's ready to come back to MLS. I kind of feel like that ship has sailed. Maybe LAFC will be the one that changes that, because they give him a chance to, with a blank slate and probably a lot of money. That might be the one place he might want to go. But I think Bob Bradley feels like he still has that EPL itch to scratch.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It would be interesting. I'm personally on the Bob bandwagon right now if we're going either place. I really think that he is sort of the personality that would do well with this particular team, with the young guys, with the older guys, and be able to bring in the talent that the LA Galaxy are going to have to bring in during the summer. And everybody keeps asking, Kevin, it's my favorite question to not answer, is who's going to come in summer to rescue this LA Galaxy team? Who's a realistic signing? I don't know that answer until summer. It's always, if you would have told me Roman Alessandrini would be on this team, I'd be like, who the heck is Roman Alessandrini? All right, I don't.
Ariella a year ago.
Yeah, Ariella Van Dam. Yeah. No, Joao Pedro. I have no idea. I have no idea who's coming. We will know about it whenever the summer comes and the names start saying who they are interested in, and then that starts to simmer. There's going to be plenty of time for us to tell you who we think is coming based off of what we hear, but we're not going to just go out there and you know who I think should come this summer, Kevin? I think Messi should come. I think that's who should. Cristiano Ronaldo should come to the LA Galaxy. Those are both guys I throw my sport behind.
Why would you bring Messi in when you already have a number 10, in Giovanni Dos Santos? I just don't see him. Yeah. I don't see Messi taking Gio's place.
Yes.
But you're right in the sense that coach will have a lot to do with that. And again, I am not, in a month we could be having a totally different conversation. But if you're trying to draw a big name European player to your team, it was easy to do with Bruce Arena. It would be easier to do with a Bob Bradley or even a Ziggy Schmidt. I think it's a little difficult to do with Curt Onalfo. He just doesn't have that name presence in Europe. And when people look at his record, they'll see that it's not all that good at the MLS level. Now, he's great in USL and developing players, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic at 35 or 36 does not want to come over and work for a coach who, I have spent the last 5 years with the reserve team. So the coach will have a lot to do. The money is important, the site, all those things go into it. But at the end of the day, the players come over here to play soccer. And I think who the manager they're going to play for, who that manager is, has a lot to do with that decision.
You said his name. You said Zlatan. So I have my Zlatan update for today. This is a quote that came from the SI Soccer Twitter account. It said, this is from Zlatan. He says, I decide when it's time to stop and nothing else. Giving up is not an option. All right. So there's Zlatan. Zlatan's coming back. Right, you're not keeping that guy out. Whether or not the LA Galaxy will be involved in that, I think right now I would say stay away. It's not going to happen this summer. It would be, you're looking at a January thing, and then I don't even know. I don't know how you make that decision going forward. I think there's some pluses there. I think there's some negatives. It's something we can talk about on a different show. But right now, no Zlatan to LA Galaxy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
So I asked Chris Klein on Friday what he thought of Ibrahimovic and what he, the Galaxy's pursuit of him now that he was injured. And Chris Klein's answer was, who said we were interested in Ibrahimovic? And, the response was, well, the whole world said that. And now you guys are denying it. And he said, no, we're not denying we're pursuing him, but we're just not acknowledging it. So who knows what all that means?
I heard off to the side that perhaps the LA Galaxy had decided to abandon that chase before this happened. This was sort of an offhand comment that somebody made, and that he was too much money and too much baggage. All right, which would be an accurate portrayal of Zlatan Ibrahimovic in some ways. So I could see it actually having happened that way. But anyway, that's your sort of Zlatan update, and I don't know that we'll have one for a very long time. So that's all it is. All right, let's go to another question. Let me see here. Raul asks, is this the worst 6 weeks in Galaxy history? And I would have to go back and look at a whole bunch of things to see if there were 6 weeks as bad as this. I will tell you this, Raul, having lived through 2008, and watching the team play in 2008 and 2007, I'm not sure that in 2008, that whole season was pretty atrocious. I'm not sure this has topped it yet, but maybe if it keeps going like this, it could.
Yeah, I think the 2003 team was pretty bad too. They even had a worse start in the first 7 games when it comes to points, number of points. So the mid 2000s were pretty dismal until Bruce Almighty came and David Beckham, and then everything changed.
All right. At Rogue Leader LA says, what did this game do to Rowe in terms of starting? Is he a bench player from here on, barring Diop injuries? And I would say, this is my opinion on the Rowe, is that Rowe is the number 1 right now. All right. And even with Diop coming back from injuries, that Rowe will stay there until Curt Onalfo deems that Brian Rowe is not good enough again, and then it might be Diop. I think that Diop was injured for this game. Kevin, you and I both covered that pretty extensively leading up to the weekend. There was no way he was going to start, and he may be out for longer than just this weekend. It could funnel into Philadelphia. Maybe Chicago is a better target if he was going to come back. And for me, right now, nothing that happened on Sunday does any disservice to Brian Rowe. He wasn't stopping any of those shots.
Well, I saw Diop twice this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Friday, he could barely move. He couldn't have stopped a glacier if he had to. I mean, couldn't have got in front of a glacier, much less a penalty kick. Looked a little bit better Saturday, different environment. But I think he's out for a while. And the interesting thing with him is, if you remember, he got hurt late in the Orlando game. Curt Onalfo did not take him out. He bowed to Diop's insistence that he's well enough to stay in the game. Remember, the Galaxy lost that game on a corner kick in stoppage time, a play that Diop almost always comes off his line to break up. He would have broke up that corner kick easily. Diop never moved because the hip bothered him. That cost the Galaxy a couple points. I asked Curt Onalfo about that, and he turned that back to the media. Speculation saying the media were trying to make something, make up something that wasn't there. It was a very un-Diop-like play, and I'm wondering if that was something the Galaxy would like to have back. Take him out, bring Brian Rowe in, because clearly he was not well and cost him a point.
Kevin, we're the root of all evils. It's the media. That's the problem with this team. That's clearly
fake news.
Yeah, fake news. That's what we have here. All right, let's go to KJ now. KJ has a two-part question. She starts with, who is to blame on the long list of woes? Players, Onalfo, front office, and then part two is, who will ultimately fall on the sword for this long list of woes? The players, Onalfo, or the front office? I think we've touched on all of this in terms of, the long list of woes for me starts with the front office. You have to point at Pete Vianis and the way that he constructed this team, in my opinion. It's a very shallow team with not a lot of depth, at least not a lot of tested depth. And we're seeing that on the field, that whenever you go to the bench, you have to bring in players like Baggio Husidic is going to save the day for the LA Galaxy in the midfield, or you're going to have to bring in Bradford Jamieson IV as an offensive sub because you don't have any other offensive subs to sort of really spur on any guys who are going to make a difference. So that's one for the front office. There has to be a ton of pressure right now on Chris Klein, though, for me, Kevin, because if Curt Onalfo continues down this road, if he continues to lose the team, if he continues to lose games at home, Chris Klein's going to be the one who's under pressure, and Dan Beckerman should be putting that pressure on Chris Klein right now, and it's going to be a toss-up for me who gets fired first.
Well, I got to go back to something. This was just before the season started, about a week or 10 days before the season started. I had a meeting, alleged dinner meeting with Dan Beckerman and Chris Klein. You know a lot about that, but we won't bore the fans with that now. But what I will say is what Chris Klein said on that day, and this is 10 days before the season started. He's talking about last year's team and this year's team. And I said, which team do you think is better? And he said, I'll take this year's team, meaning the 2017 team. He thought this year's team was stronger than last year's going into the season. And then he said about building the team, he said, I believe that we are smarter this year. Last year's team was very much built to win last year. We're thinking beyond that now. We think we've upgraded our roster. Let's read that again. We think we've upgraded our roster and given us a chance to be younger and more dynamic than we've ever been. And so that's what Chris Klein said going into the season. Another stat I looked up is last year the Galaxy had 16 players that made $100,000 or more. That doesn't, the worth of the contract doesn't necessarily say that they're talented players. 10 of those 16 players are gone, and you're looking at guys like Mike McGee and Alan Gordon and Lorenowitz and AJ De La Garza and Robbie Rogers, who we're not going to see again. All those guys gone, and boy, you'd sure like to plug one or two of those guys in at certain parts of some of these games that have gone the other way, and you'd like to think that they would have made the difference. But management says this team is better, and so far they're standing by that.
Yeah, that's why that's why I have been slow to push the blame on Onalfo, and more pushing towards the front office and how they built this team. And I have no problem, sort of equaling that out right now, because what I saw on the field on Sunday pushes me towards Onalfo right now in terms of what actually happened there. But if you look at how this team was built, it's a shallow team. We knew this. We knew this when we started the season. So, I mean, that's where we stand right now there, KJ, so I hope that answers your question. Let's see. Okay, Carrie asks, how do we rebuild, ? And is there any hope for Gio as is? Oh, this is good. Can you even, is it time to rebuild? Is there enough talent on here? It's not necessarily a build, it's an add.
No, I don't think you can add one or two pieces, even a Zlatan. And I'm, if they're done with Zlatan, I think that comes from his side, not from the Galaxy side. I think, his agent did the due diligence and looked at what's here in LA and realized that bringing him over from Europe wasn't going to change things. I do think it's a rebuild. I think there are some really good pieces. Nathan Smith made a couple of errors yesterday and led to goals. The goals all came from that left side where he's playing right back. So he's going to be a really good player. But right now he's going to make mistakes, and you just have to live with that, because the way you get to be better is to make mistakes and learn from them. So there are a lot of players like that are going to be much better later on. And they're struggling a little bit now. So I don't think you can bring in one or two pieces and it's going to change everything. I think this is a rebuild. I think it's going to take a while. And I think they're going to decide that they have Daniel Sturridge is a good player. I think they're going to find out Nathan Smith is a good player, and then they're going to maybe replace Ashley Cole. Maybe that's where Romney goes. So I think it's going to take a little bit of a while. The Gio question is a little bit more interesting to me, because you and I had this discussion and we had a disagreement. I think one of the things with Bruce Arena is that Bruce is known throughout. Everyone who's played in MLS knows that Bruce is a great man manager. For all his faults, he's a great man manager. And I heard some stories about things he's done with people on the national team and past days with the national team, like Kyle Martino and others, where he'll just come up and mention something in passing and just plant an idea in a player's head. Letting that player know that Bruce knows what's going on and Bruce knows what's happening and Bruce knows a little more than he's let on. And then the player takes it upon himself to change or to make the necessary adjustments. I think, and you and I get to disagree with that, but, Gio scored 15 goals last year in his first full season with Bruce Arena. He has 5 shots on goal this year, and the 1 goal was on a penalty kick. So is Bruce Arena responsible for all that? I don't know, but Bruce Arena was able to, at times, get the best out of Gio, and I haven't seen that happen this year.
Yeah, my big thing with Gio is that if you go back and you look at last year, is that he scored goals in fits and starts. And so, to ever say that he was a consistent scoring presence last year, I think sort of just looks at the stats and doesn't necessarily, see when he scored and how he scored and when those goals were scored. He was very good last year. Very good. He was as good as you need to have from a designated player. And if he was to score 15 goals and get, 11, 12, 13 assists in this year and back that season up, then you could say that, you're getting something for your money out of Giovanni Dos Santos. Right now in the formation or however he's being utilized, if you have to plan around him in order to get him 15 goals or however that is, then that's what you need to do in order to get him. So is there any hope for Gio as is? Yeah. But I don't know that necessarily means that he fits with the rest of the team. And if you're going to blow that team up, as Kerry asks, how we rebuild, if you're going to blow that team up, do you again plan around Giovanni Dos Santos? This team was supposedly built around Giovanni Dos Santos, and it's just not turning out that way. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Any follow up, or should we go on to the next question, Kevin?
No, let's go on to the next question.
All right. Let's see. Ben Robles says, if you were going to make a coaching shortlist, who's your top choice? And we already went over that. So that was Bradley and Schmidt for us. Who is the what? Oh, and I can't. Claudio Ranieri was also one people were tossing around on
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, on Twitter as well. But I thought I'd throw that in there. Hey Kevin, if I want a short list and he's on it, all right. Claudio's on the list.
Yeah, you drop a short list, you put those names on it, and you make the phone call. But I don't think you you start to clear space for them in the locker room just yet.
Yeah. Somebody asked. How do we get rid of Jones as quickly as possible? You have to live with him throughout this year. You either go out and you get a defensive midfielder that can sort of pair with him, or you get actually, what I even like better is you get an attacking central midfielder, a central attacking midfielder, and you put him in front of Jones and make Jones be the defensive midfielder. And I think you might have something there. But right now, with how they have it, it's just Jones played most of the second half in front of Giovanni Dos Santos. Did everybody catch that whole formation change and stuff that happened? At one point in the press box, Kevin, I had no idea what the formation the LA Galaxy were trying to play. And there were 3 of us who are very used to watching games and watching soccer, and we were sitting there going, Is it a 4-2-3-1? Where is this person playing? Are these guys the defensive midfielders? Are Baggio and Joao Pedro the sort of the defensive midfielders? And then in front of them, you had Gio and you had I couldn't even remember, Zardes. I think Zardes dropped back and was Gio up top. It took us probably 20 minutes to figure out what kind of formation the LA Galaxy were playing in the second half because it didn't resemble anything that we've seen.
And the problem is the players probably feel the same way. We don't know what formation we're playing in. And you're right about Gio. As he begins to disappear in games, he'll again have fits and starts where he's pushing forward and looking really good. But as he starts to disappear, he moves further and further back. And I'm waiting for the day he puts on the big gloves and steps in goal because, that's where he's headed. He seems to be moving back. He goes from, a forward to the number 10 to the defensive midfield. Pretty soon he's going to be playing center back. And that's not what you want your chief offensive weapon to be doing.
No, it's not. So obviously still some Gio issues to work. And then, Jermaine Jones as well. Listen, you have to deal with most of these contracts. I know people really just want to get rid of people and start you're going to have to deal with Joao Pedro's contract. You have to deal with Giovanni Dos Santos, Jermaine Jones. You have to deal with all of these contracts. There is no way out of them. You're not going to get other players to retire. All right. They got Dan Kennedy to retire. All right. It looks like they're going to get Robbie Rogers to retire eventually as well. All right. So all of these things, you can't just get rid of people. And you can't always force them to retire, all right? I don't know. Maybe somebody could talk to Jermaine Jones.
Well, I mean, you look at other sports like baseball. The Angels got tired of Josh Hamilton. They sent him back to Texas. They pay his salary. They, paid $100 million of his salary. In baseball, you can do that. You're able to trade players much more easily. There's no salary cap. You can't do that. Let's just say they decide that Jermaine Jones is hurt and he's not going to play this year, or they want to send him to Houston or whatever, and they're going to pay his salary. That counts against their salary cap. That means they can't bring in somebody to take his position. And it's much harder in MLS. And you make a mistake, and it's super, and same as NHL. The Kings, the AEG's other team is finding out now, the Kings have a lot of bad contracts too. And with a salary cap league, you make a bad contract, you have to live with that for a long time. And so if there are players that some Galaxy fans think are not performing and they'd like to get rid of them, that, as you've said a couple times, that's just not going to happen.
All right. Two more questions, and then we are going to be done. Play those last couple of calls so that way we can get out of here. We have Robert at Robert WFD, and Robert says Onalfo would be fine if he still had Keane and LD banging in the goals and assists. That's the issue. You've lost your two best attackers in team history, and I call BS, Robert. The Keane wasn't banging in goals last year. Landon Donovan wasn't banging in goals last year. If Onalfo had the 2014 team or even the 2015 team, you could see them being better. You could understand that. But the 2016 team didn't do much of anything. The results for the third place finish for the LA Galaxy were actually kind of miraculous, considering that team was fairly useless on a regular basis.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I like the thought. I like the spirit, but obviously, yeah. Robbie Keane was done long before he knew he was. I mean, it's kind of like saying if the Dodgers had Sandy Koufax to pitch behind Clayton Kershaw, they'd be a lot better. Well, not really, because Sandy Koufax is about 83 years old. So
yeah.
I like the idea, but you're right. If this was the 2014 team, they'd be great, but then we wouldn't need the academy players and all that kind of stuff. You can't kind of mix and match eras, I don't think.
Yeah, and I was also going to say that Robert may have also been answering that tongue-in-cheek. So, Robert, I apologize if I take it seriously and you meant it sarcastically. There's no sarcasm font. I keep asking for one. That's how we do it. Kishan writes in, and I think we also have a call from Kishan as well. So, and he says, are you worried about Gyasi Zardes' slow start? For me, Kevin, yes, I'm worried about Gyasi Zardes' slow start because they haven't been able to link to him, and this has been the same problem with Jack McBean whenever he was there. You're not getting any production out of your strikers. So, yes, I'm extremely worried for the Galaxy if they're not getting any production out of their strikers.
Well, I'm worried about the lack of production, but I'm not blaming Gyasi or McBean. I think it's all the midfield. I think 99.95% of the problems with this team is coming from the midfield. They're not linking up with the strikers. They're not getting the ball to the strikers. They're allowing other teams like the Seattle Sounders to run right through the midfield. How many times have the Galaxy gotten beat on counterattacks right up the middle of the field? Yes, Some of that is the back line. A lot of it maybe is the back line. But this midfield is just not, the two guys on the wings, Boateng and Allison Dreger, are having good seasons. But Joao Pedro and Jermaine Jones are not on the same page. They are not. There's no chemistry there, and they can't get the ball from the back line to the front. to get it to the strikers. And again, Giassi's artist, I think, what did I say? He had 2 shots on goal in 4 games, 3 shots on goals.
Right.
That's not enough. He needs to get, if you're converting 50% of your shots on goal, that still means you need 2 shots to get 1 goal.
Right.
And nobody scores a goal a game. So he's just not getting the attempts.
Yeah, he's not. All right, last email. We got an email from Ethan. He wrote in using the Corner of the Galaxy website, by the way. Go there and hit the contact us button. You can send us an email that way if you so prefer. Ethan says, after the recent loss to Seattle, we're seeing the biggest drop of morale and anger towards the organization, front office, players, and coaching staff. With all this outcry for the front office to cut ties with Curt, although I'm skeptical they will, or blowing this whole thing up and starting fresh, another crazy idea considering how much we've invested. What do you think is the next step going forwards in terms of damage control? Well, if they let Curt go, who should be in the running for his position? Who do we sell, keep if we are starting over? I think we've answered all the coaching. I think we've answered all of the time frame questions. Clearly, it's what you guys wanted to do, so I want to make sure that we try to get in this. But who do we sell and keep? And right now, I think you keep Alessandrini, you keep Zardes. For me, you keep Boateng. You keep. Let's see. I'm trying to go position by position. Giovanni Dos Santos, you're going to get stuck with. All right, he's with the team for a while, so you're going to have to keep him. So you keep him. I'm trying to think who else. Jelle Van Dam. Ashley Cole's going to retire. This is probably his last year. Dave Romney is probably that guy who steps in. So you do that. So I mean, am I?
I like Steris and Nathan Smith.
Okay. Yep. Steris and Nathan Smith. I agree on those as well. I'm trying to think. I think that's Brian Rowe, Clement Diop. You keep them both. Diop is going to end up being, the goalkeeper of the future here. He just needs to learn to be a little smarter when he comes off his line. Really.
But the guys we're talking about, I mean, with the maybe exception of Alessandrini and then Zardes, I think Nathan Smith's going to be a really good player. I think he's going to be a very good center or very good right back. He's going to play a lot of years in this league. But right now, when I look at him and I sort of try to project him myself, he is not an AJ De La Garza. He is not a Liam Ridgewell in Portland. I know he's a center back, but he's not the dominant kind of defender that is going to take a team forward. He's serviceable. He's really good. He's better than a journeyman. He's a good, dependable player. But the guys that you just named, again, with the exception of Alessandrini and maybe Zardes, I don't see those as the kind of guys that we've had in the past here. I mean, think back to the good Galaxy teams, 2011, 2012, 2014, and the defenders they had like Omar Gonzalez and again, AJ, and guys that made that team so good. Sean Franklin for a while, Juninho and Sarvis. Those are the guys that they weren't just good players. They were players that made a difference. And the list that you just went down with 1 or 2 exceptions, I just don't see those guys on there. I mean, are we looking at a time now where maybe the Galaxy is, a team that fights to get into the top 6 and gets into the playoffs and hopes to have a good run, as opposed to a team that competes for the Supporters' Shield every year, which is what we're used to?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a sea change here. It is an interesting, and I still think that the Galaxy front office has a chance to rectify this and make things right.
But they get to blame. Curt Onalfo will be the scapegoat if, in fact, things go south. And I want to keep saying that because things can turn on a dime. We're not even a quarter of the way into the season. Right. And yes, this last loss was so horrible. Everybody is chewing their fingernails down to the bone. And it was terrible, yes, and there's nothing positive that came out of that game. But things can turn on a dime. So let's just, if things turn out okay, then this is a ridiculous pod. But if they don't, I think Curt Onalfo is the guy that everyone's going to, in the front office, is going to point the fingers at him. But you know what? They made the decision to hire Curt Onalfo. They gave Curt Onalfo the players. So it's more their fault than his, but I think Curt Onalfo is going to be the guy that's going to get blamed. They'll bring in a new coach. This team is too talented to struggle for too long. The team will turn it around, may or may not make the playoffs, but start to put a couple of wins together, and the front office will say, see, our plan was good all along. It was the coach's problem, and that's going to be unfair to Curt Onalfo, I think.
All right, so that's it. That's pretty much, we're going to wrap it up here, but I want to play these 2 calls because I promised everybody they get on, and I want to make sure that everybody sort of gets their chance. So here's our next one. I call it long time, first time. Here we go.
Long time since I go over here. Very disappointed in our showing. Onalfo did a terrible sub putting in Baxter for Boateng. We need a better coach. We need a better midfield. Jermaine Jones didn't say that. We have too many problems. This is not a couple for an LA team who's won so many championships. This is terrible. We need a change, and unfortunately, I love Onalfo and everything. I respect him, but this job is not for him. We need a high.
All right, and we go to our final.
Hey guys, this is Keishan, calling from up in San Francisco. I'm from Ventura County, down about an hour away from LA. I'm up in San Francisco for college. I just want to say that I love the show. I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Us Galaxy fans really appreciate it. I just got done watching the Galaxy versus Seattle game. And to be honest with you guys, up until this game today, I was still pretty optimistic about this team, about this season. I knew that we were going to struggle a little bit because of the transitions and kind of like the new look team, some new players, some new faces. We lost a lot of people, but I was still optimistic. And the games that we had played before today, all of them hadn't gone very well, but I still kind of liked what I saw in certain periods of those games. I still had hope. There was a lot of fight from at least most of the players on the team. Even in the games that we lost, I thought we had at least competed and had periods of time where we could have turned the game around and actually won the game or tied the game. However, that being said, after watching this game today, I am finding it a lot harder to be that optimistic. LA Galaxy versus Seattle Sounders is, and has been since Seattle came into the league, one of the biggest games in the whole league, in all of MLS every year. Just because of the success of both teams and the players and the talent levels. And it just did not seem like this Galaxy team on the field today knew what Galaxy versus Seattle was about. I think there are serious issues within the team in terms of leadership. I don't think that someone like Jermaine Jones listens to Curt Onalfo. I would almost go to say that he doesn't even respect him. Yella Van Dam has looked like a shadow of his former self. It looks like he's not the real leader that he was last year. We've talked about, obviously, about how Giovanni Dos Santos goes missing. I think Jossie Zardes, I understand that he's coming back from injury, but he has looked I can't even describe like how lost he looks on the field. His first touch is off. He doesn't look like he knows what spots to get into. I thought Roman Alessandrini.
All right, and that's listen. Here's certainly, Kishan. We appreciate the call, and that was great. Eventually the voicemail coughs off at 3 minutes. That's sort of how it works. So, which is good probably for most things. Otherwise, Kevin and I wouldn't get a chance to talk. But listen, we want to thank everybody for coming in and giving us your calls and giving us your questions. This is what this show is about, for you to be able to interact with two guys who cover the LA Galaxy on a regular basis, who talk about the LA Galaxy with each other on a daily basis. I think it might be a bi-daily basis sometimes between Kevin and I. So, we are living this along with you guys, and we're happy to give you our, sort of outside perspective from things, knowing what the team is doing on the inside and giving you as much information as possible. So, Kevin, anything else you want to say before we wrap up this show?
No, but I think we're looking at a really important week.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. LA Galaxy will face off against the Philadelphia Union. They host them 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. This is going to be a very, very interesting game. Like I said before, if you're looking for a reason to come to the game, then your reason is, and it's a very good reason, is that you want to see what the LA Galaxy are capable of doing in a game that they definitely should win. So we'll see how that goes. All right. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter, it's at KBaxter11 on Twitter. And of course, if you're going to the LA Times website, make sure you look up all of Kevin's wonderful writings over there at the LA Times and subscribe. Throw some bones Kevin's way. He'll appreciate that. And that way we'll make sure that he continues to write and cover soccer as much as possible. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast. And of course, go to cornerofthegalaxy.com where you can read my game recap of what I thought happened against the Seattle game. And, of course, you can always throw in your own thoughts up there as well. All right, for Mr. Kevin Baxter, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box. I'm sure it'll get better next week, all right? This will be a more upbeat show next week. I'm positive of it, all right? Everybody have a great day. We'll talk to you later.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy from the Box podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at The Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.